today to HR Recruit's virtual boardroom called Unlocking Empowerment, Making and Taking It. My name's Jo Thompson and I'm a consultant for HR Recruit. I'm joined today by Jane Hodgson, who will introduce herself shortly. Jane will take you through some simple steps to making the right conditions for empowerment, giving you a greater success rate at getting your people to take it. If you've got any burning questions or comments during the session, then please put them into the chat box facility and we will cover them as we go along. I'm now going to hand you over to Jane, who will introduce herself and start the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. Hi, everybody. Yeah, thank you for that. So, as mentioned, I'm Jane Hodgson. I'll just do a very quick introduction. I've worked in learning and development for about 20 years now as a trainer and as a coach. I specialise in leadership development, management and team development, and everything that used to be called soft skills, which is kind of ironic because they're the hardest skills to master. So anything around people development, that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. So hopefully you're in safe hands today. I've worked all over the world. I've worked across 16 countries, 4 continents, Asia, Africa, America. And this is why I'm so passionate about this, is because I've seen some of this stuff in play. I've worked across a load of different sectors. Recently, last week, I was working in construction. Before that, I was working for a banking company. I've got something on in January for a pharma company. I've worked in healthcare, waste management, you name it. If it exists, I've probably had some contact with it in the last 20 years. And just another little interesting fact, I was recently in a film with Ryan Gosling. But that's a story for another day. So, as I mentioned, I've traveled a lot in my work. And one of the things I hear a lot from managers is this idea that, wish my staff would take more ownership and start thinking for themselves. I'm going to ask you now, if you are a manager, and I want to make this a little bit more of an interactive, rather than just me talking for 40 minutes or whatever. I do want you to kind of get involved. It's not a spectator sport, it's a participation event. So at the bottom of your screen, if you put your mouse down there, you'll have a little love heart that says reactions. Give me a thumbs up if you've kind of said that to yourself or thought that, if you are somebody that manages staff. Have you ever thought, God, I wish staff would just step up a little bit more? Yeah, I'm already seeing thumbs up. Yeah, I know I've heard this a lot, and I've probably said this when I was a manager as well. But the kind of weird thing is, when I talk to staff about their managers, I wish my boss would just trust me. I've got loads of ideas. I know what I'm doing, but they're just, they insist on managing everything and making all the decisions for me. And again, if you've said that to yourself, maybe about your boss, give me a thumbs up. Have you ever thought to yourself, I wish they'd just let me get on with this. I wish they'd just let me trust it and do what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm seeing thumbs up. So it seems to me really obvious, right? We kind of want the same things, right? We want people to have this sense of autonomy, empowerment, ownership, call it what you like. We want people to make decisions and get on with it. But if we both want it, why is it not happening? And that's what we're going to look at today. So, question for you in the chat. What do you think I mean by empowerment? What's your definition of empowerment? And Joe's just going to kind of keep an eye on that for us. What do you think? If you had to sum up empowerment, somebody said, hey, what's empowerment? What does that mean? What would you say? What are your thoughts? Allowing participation, yeah. Trusting people, taking control, yeah. Some permission to make decisions, yeah, I like that. Joe, I'm kind of on it, but if I miss anything, please do shout. Feeling contributions are valid, yeah, encouraging people, trusting. So we all want that in the workplace, right? There's psychological safety. I love that. Needs to be the right environment. That's what we're going to look at today. Treating people as adults. I always say to people, treat people like adults, and you'll be amazed because they will start to do adult things. All right. But it's such a simple thing. I used to have a boss, and his version of empowerment was the freedom to act. And I love that. But I'm not going to lie, it makes me also very nervous. Like, whoa, it's not a free for all. So I've added my own little bit on the bottom, is freedom to act within boundaries. And I think it touches on what some of you people are saying there. It's enabling people to contribute. It's allowing people to make decisions, take control. But it isn't a free for all, right? We don't, it's not a kindergarten. We're not going to let people run crazy. So I believe in this passionately, and I believe in it because I've seen it, and when it works, it works. But I've had people come to me and go, Jane, it just doesn't work. And I go, what do you mean it doesn't work? I remember years ago, I was working for an organization, did a whole leadership program. People loved it, very engaged. One guy left the leadership program full of energy, full of beans, and he was absolutely, that's it, I'm going to empower my team. And he went to the team, he said, right, everyone, you're empowered. Go make some decisions, crack on. And of course, it didn't work and it fell apart. I'm going to ask you, why do you think it fell apart? What do you think went on there? If your boss had said that to you, for example, you're empowered, crack on. What would that mean? Because I've got my thoughts on why I think it fell apart, but I'm interested to see. Yeah, no context, no structure, just nothing. Just get on with it. And I said to this guy, listen, you've got to remember, you've spent the last 10 years saying to your teams, you don't need to think. I'm here to make decisions. You just do as you're told. I'll make all the big decisions. You can have a contribution, but I am the person making all the decisions. What you then do is say, oh, guess what? Go on, crack on. The level of trust in that team just went right down, because everybody thought, is it a trick? What's going on? And somebody actually came up to me and went, has my boss been on one of your courses? Because he's being all reasonable. What's this about? So it isn't about giving empowerment. And that's why I talk about making and taking. It is about making the environment right. Somebody's already said about the environment. It's about making that environment right so that that person can take empowerment. So it's something you kind of create, and the other person has to take it. And it's a two-way thing. So I'm going to talk today about how we can kind of, we can blast your leadership into the next level. And I do honestly believe you'll take some of these things away and think it's actually quite simple. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is care about your team. Now, you're probably sitting there going, well, that's a bit rude, Jane. Of course I care. Why are you saying that? We all love an acronym, and trainers more than anyone. And my acronym is CARE. And it is about creating a competence in your teams, making sure everybody knows what they're doing. Sounds simple, but we'll come to that. Then we're talking about the authority and the accountability. And accountability is really careful here, a really important word here, because, if you give people authority, they get quite suspicious. They're like, well, what does that mean if it goes wrong? And that's a conversation you need to be having. Then we're talking about resources. So you've got to be reasonable. People can't work with nothing if they haven't got the right resources. And then it's just engagement, getting people to actually care. So this is I've used this throughout my career as a manager. I've seen it used in places. And if we stop and take this kind of step process of how we manage people, we're creating that right environment for empowerment. So the first thing I'm going to look at is competence. Now, that means, does everyone have the skills to do the job? So I'm going to do something. I'm going to ask you to look on the screen at the moment. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are levels of competence. Level 1, don't know anything about it. Don't know what you're talking about, Jane. Sorry, no clue. Level 2, yeah, I have some knowledge, but I'm not competent. I know that I'm not competent. That's fine. 3, yeah, I have some competence, but it does take a bit of an effort. And 4, I can do this thing in my sleep. So I'm going to ask you if you can rate yourself 1 to 4 on the following skills. So I'm a manager, and I've got a project coming up, and I think, right, I'm going to ask my team, and I know there's going to be a lot of Teams in there, Microsoft Teams. Now, we're using Zoom today, and I would rate my competence on Zoom probably at a 3, because I tend to use Teams more than anything. But I'm going to stick with Teams because that's what I know. I'm going to ask you to rate yourself in the chat box. Can you put a number 1 to 4 according to that competence? So your boss says, we've got this project coming up. It's going to involve a lot of teams. How competent are you with teams? Where are you with teams? Just give me a number. Don't overthink it. Chuck a number in there. Where are we? Yeah, lots of 3s, some 4s. Fantastic. Right. So as a manager now, I'm like, whew, brilliant. I've done that thing that Jane asked. I've checked the competency. Happy days. Let me just check this. So let's say you're setting up a Teams meeting. Okay, you can all do that. You're all a 3 or 4. Let's say you can share your screen because you're all coming in at 3 or 4. Can you tell me how competent you are when it comes to setting up breakout rooms? Give me a number. Okay, lots of 3s. Oh, 2. Okay, so that 2 might need a little bit more help. 3s. Oh, we've got a 1 going, I don't know what you're on about. I've never used Teams. Okay. All right, so now we're seeing those 3s and 4s get a little bit different. So, okay, let's really push it then. And in this project, you're going to have to use whiteboards. How confident are you at using a whiteboard on Teams? Give me a number. 2s, 1s. So some people are thinking, I didn't even know I had a whiteboard, Jane. Oh, 1s. Okay, what's this about? What whiteboard? What are you talking about? You're thinking of like a classroom whiteboard. No, Teams has a whiteboard functionality. All right, let's get really into it. Now, as part of your project that I'm going to empower you with, you will use a lot of Teams, and you'll need to generate some word clouds because we're going to take some feedback and we want some word clouds. Give me a number. Where are you? Okay, now we're seeing a real variance, aren't we? Lots of 2s, lots of people going, well, I kind of know they exist, but no idea how to use one, if I'm honest. And this is the challenge when it comes to competency. I even think that word competency is quite emotive. But what we're talking about is the skill level. And it's very easy to assume just because somebody's in a job that they have that skill level. It's a bit like saying, listen, Bob has worked on loads of projects. We'll make him the project manager on the next one. Being a project manager is different to being on a project, right? Just as you wouldn't go into a restaurant, say, well, I've eaten at loads of restaurants, I'm now going to be the chef, stand aside and get a pan out and start making my dinner. So when we talk about competence, it's very easy to make assumptions that everything's okay. But actually, we should challenge that now and again. Is it okay? Do you have all the skills that you need for this particular task? Remembering, and as a training manager, I got this so much. When somebody identifies a gap in someone's competence, the first thing you do is you ring the training manager up, go, I've got Bob. He has no idea how to use whiteboards. Can you send him on a Teams course? Can he go on a course at the local college at night school or whatever? And I'm sure a lot of you, I know we're talking to the HR community, so I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this, but it's always important to remind yourself of the 10, 20, 70 rule. Only 10% of what we learn comes from those formal workshops. Now, I'm not going to diss them because that's my job, right? I'm not going to talk myself out of work. Formal workshops obviously are very important. Online learning, certified courses. There are certain things you wouldn't want someone to just learn by osmosis. I wouldn't want to go to a dentist that hadn't gone through formal training. But what we have to remember, the majority of our learning comes outside of that. So we have things like social learning, communities of practice, what we're doing today, getting together with people. I do it all the time. I've got some people who work in learning and development. We have lunch and learns and all that good stuff. And then there's experiential learning, sitting by Nelly, as they used to call it, showing my age now, project work, secondment, shadowing. So if you have any concerns about someone's competency, and again, I think that word, because people don't like the word incompetent, because people are like, what do you mean I'm incompetent? Listen, do you have the skills needed for that job, for that task? And if you have concerns, don't necessarily go straight to the budget and say, well, what can we afford to send this person on? Think about, well, get creative. What are the other ways that I can help this person develop their competence? Again, quick question for you. You're in your car and you get a little message on your screen saying battery on the key fob needs changing. Now, you could go to Halfords and pay £10 or whatever it is, and they put it in for you. Or you think, do you know what? I can do this. I'll figure this out. What would you do? In the chat box, what are your options? What would you do? Figure it out. You would figure it out. How would you figure it out, though? What's your go-to? How you figure? I mean, you could just, Google it. YouTube or Google. Yeah, go to the shop. Yeah, you could do panic. Don't panic, Nigel. YouTube is your best friend. YouTube, the University of YouTube and Google will tell you everything you need to know. And so if you are asking someone to upskill, don't necessarily go to your budget and say, we've got to spend thousands of pounds. Say, look, what online workshops are there? There's lots of free stuff online. What we're doing today is free, There's loads of resources out there. So when you're thinking about developing the competency of your teams, don't panic if you don't have a huge budget or resources, because we live in a much more connected world than we've ever been. And those things are there for you. That, it's just a question of reaching out and looking at them. Okay, so that's your first step of getting to the stage where you're creating the right environment for empowerment. I'm going to have a look now at authority. And that's things like budgets, escalation points, staffing levels, facilities, compliance laws. These are kind of the boundary conditions, if you like, that you have to put in place. Because as I say, it's not a free for all. Because if you say to someone, actually, it's a free for all, that's actually really daunting. I remember 15 years ago, I moved into my first kind of serious management role. And my boss was very, very well meaning at the time. And I said, right, okay, I've moved into this role, very senior. What do you need me to do? And she said, oh, you'll figure it out. I was like, no, I love your faith in me, but can you help me understand what we need to be doing? She was like, I have everything. You'll be great. I said, no, I love that. Thank you. You know, she said, the world's your oyster. You do anything you need to do. And I went home after about 3 weeks, and I remember distinctly walking across the car park, going into Tesco. I was picking something up on the way home for dinner, and I just burst into tears because I thought, I have no idea what I'm doing. This free reign is too much. I can't handle it because I need to know what it is you want me to do. So when we're talking about levels of authority, it's not that we're trying to keep people in chains. We're trying to give them some strong guidance on what it is you're actually supposed to be doing. I'm going to ask you in the chat box. You know, I've put there things like budget, escalation points, etc. What other kind of red flags or boundaries do you think we might have to think about if we are asking someone to just go for it? What would you want to put in? What would you want to see in place? Yeah, time, exactly. How much time are you spending on it? You know, if I'm giving you a project and you spend, God, Alfred, if I'm giving you a project and you're spending so much time on it, I want to know what's going on. Vanessa works in the car industry. Yeah, time. Isn't it funny? Time frame as well, because if you've got a project, if it's a 2-year project, that's massive. So, do we have short interval control? Do we have little stage gate processes and things like that? So it's really important we get that. If you don't have that, well, yeah, what good looks like? Again, Vanessa, absolutely. What are the standards that I'm looking to achieve? There's a great story of a teacher, another program that I do, a teacher had tasked students to read 10 books a month, or 10 was it? It was 10 books a month for if they could say they'd read 10 books in a month, they would get vouchers for McDonald's. And of course the students were all, yeah, great. But the quality of the books they chose were terrible. They just chose pamphlets, more or less, that they could read and skip through in a half an hour. So we have to be very clear on what good looks like. What are our expectations? There's nothing worse than saying to someone, go on you go, crack on. And the flip side of that is accountability. And that's the word that will frighten everybody. I don't want to say, listen, get this wrong, you're going to get fired. But get it wrong and we're going to have a conversation because I want to know why you've got it wrong. If you followed all the guidance, you followed all the rules, you followed all the stuff we talked about, then at the moment you found you're in difficulty, why didn't you escalate? People make mistakes. If they make mistakes with the best will in the world, we kind of have to suck that up. If they make mistakes, there are certain mistakes you can't make. So you can't make mistakes around compliance, for example. You can't make mistakes around safety. And that's what you as a manager need to think about. How loose do you want those boundary conditions? If it's the first time you're really trusting someone, then, keep it quite tight. If you reckon that person is a number 4 in their competence and you know for a fact that they are, then you're going to trust them. But we need to have accountability conversations because otherwise people won't trust you. They'll think it's a trick. I've had this before. I've asked people to come and help me with projects. And one guy said he would get involved, then he did no work on it. And I was like, why isn't he doing any work? And I found out from someone else that he'd gone back to his, it was a manufacturing company, he'd gone back to his machine going, oh, they've asked me to help, but I've said I will, but I'm not doing because you know what it's like. You cock up, they'll fire you. I'm not going to fire someone if we've had a really good conversation about those boundary conditions, about what their levels of authority are and whether they've actually stuck to that. So we've got the C for competence. We've talked about authority and accountability, and we're going to move on now to resources. Do they have everything they need? A lot of you have said time. That I can't tell you how big one that is. We are so time poor, aren't we? Did a massive project a couple of years ago where I taught people within an organization to be coaches because the senior manager was like, we want the experienced staff to coach the other staff. And that was a great model. I said, well, it is a great model. Let's do it. And we spent, a lot of money coaching their staff to go out and do shop floor operational coaching, but they never freed them up. So when I went back and said, hey, how's it going? They're like, well, I've got a full-time job to do. I'm in at 6, I finish at 2. That's my shift. And then I'm expected to go and coach on top of that. What in terms of resources, let me give you an example. So I'm going to let you read that. I won't read it out to you. You can all read. So you've been given this job. You've worked in Goods In for a while. You know what you're doing. It's in a bit of a mess. It needs a bit more space. You know, you've been asked to sort it out. They've empowered you. They've given you this project, and you feel fairly comfortable that you're going to be able to do it. In the chat box, tell me what resources you think you'll need. So let's have a look. Yeah. Yeah, measures. Yeah, people, time, equipment, IT systems. Yeah, what's working, what's not. Guidance on desired outcome. I'm feeling the pressure with this one. Back to warehouse manager. Thank you, Helen. Get the manager on the call. Yeah, time, equipment. I'm so glad you're saying time, because that is one of the things that people often forget. So they think IT, equipment, it's a warehouse. Do we need more shelving? Limitations of location, ability to speak to other people. Thank you, Robin. That's so important. Do I have the right to go up to the head of logistics and have a conversation? Because I've had it before, and I'm sure you've come across this, where I've put meetings in and I've had my manager jump down my throat going, why are you going to that person? You need to come through me first. Okay, put that in the boundary conditions up front then. Tell me that up front. The buy-in from other managers, forklift truck drivers, yeah. Time, authority. What about headspace? Thank you, Justina. That's important as well. Do I actually have the capacity and the bandwidth to do this? And am I doing this as well as doing my full-time job? Because I've seen those projects and they nearly always fail. What about things like, none of you said that, and what you've said there is really important. Yeah, potential software, what we're aiming for versus where we are now. And again, I've seen, can we future-proof it? Can we look at, well, what does good look like, and how do we future-proof that with the right software, not just the software for now? But what about things like, it's a goods in department. So what about looking at something like our forthcoming schedule? How much are we expecting? Are there any patterns? Does it die off at this time of year? In actual fact, we're getting to, if you've got a warehouse manager, I'm sure they'll tell you there are certain times of year where your warehouse is absolutely packed, and then it's not. And actually, if you work in a warehouse, you don't want it to be packed. You need the goods out as quick as you can. So they tend to be more of a distribution center. So what about that? Looking at the load, what about the load of work that's coming and going? Because actually, you could spend a fortune on this and find out that, we've just lost one of our big clients and the orders is just going to drop off anyway. So the goods in is going to go right down. Is this actually the problem? Yes, thank you, Vanessa. Is the stock too high? What happens? This is a conversation we should be having. And again, I'm saying, you made me smile there, Vanessa, because I work for manufacturing, so I'm all about lean and, Tim Woods, if anyone's heard of Tim Woods, all about making sure you've got the right amount of stock and it's just in time. So yeah, absolutely. These are all conversations we need to have it. But I think what I really love is, as well as those practicalities that a lot of you have mentioned, things like headspace, because that's not tangible. That's not something you can kind of measure, but it is hugely important. You've mentioned time, appropriate lead. Am I the right person for this job? Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has put people on there. Have I got the right people on this job? Because actually, and again, I'll kind of share a story. I remember doing a story with a waste management company, and it was around recycling plastics. And we went around the room, and it was a safety project. And we went around the room and we said, who are you? I'm head of finance. I'm here because this project needs to save X amount. Okay. Who are you? I'm head of logistics, and I'm here because we've only got so much storage and we need to do that. I'm here. And then the chap at the very end was a forklift truck driver, and he said, oh, I'm just the forklift truck driver. I went, what? You are the one we need. Like, we need you up front and center because you're the one who understands what the problems are. So actually, I've been on so many projects where the people in the room are forgive me for saying this, but they're the kind of pen pushers and the bean counters and the people that have got the big picture stuff. But actually, sometimes we need people who are doing the job day to day because they know. And he had so much insight to bring. He was brilliant. I'm so glad we had him. But the first day or so on that project, he was so sheepish because he thought, I don't really deserve to be here. I'm not one of these senior people. Listen, you're the person with the most clarity and insight. So have we got the right resources? So we've got people's competence, and that varies. We've seen that already. You all said you were a 3 and a 4 when it came to teams, but when we dug a little deeper, there was more to it. We talk about authority. What can I do? What can't I do? Who am I actually allowed to speak to? Am I allowed to call a meeting with the senior bosses? Am I allowed to spend budget? If so, at what point do I escalate? Then we talked about resources. And that includes everything, and that includes the non-tangible stuff as well. The headspace, the bandwidth. Do I have the skills? Do I have the people? Do I have all the stuff I actually need? And then finally, we're going to talk about engagement. And do we know why that task is important, and why should they care? So, in the little reactions thing at the bottom, I've just shown you a picture there. If you know what that picture is, give me a thumbs up. If you don't know what that picture is, give me the little, shocked face. And if you know what it is, fantastic. Just keep it to yourself for now. But if you don't, give me the little shocked face and I'll try and see where we're at. Yeah, shocked face coming in. Okay, seeing a few shocked faces. Have we got any thumbs up? Shocked face, yeah. Shock, shock, shock. Okay. Ah, Vicky, well done. Vicky's got it. Shock face, no. Okay, and this is sometimes the challenge as well. We tend to work in silos, and that's not, nobody in the right mind goes to work and thinks like that. Nobody says, I'm going to go to work today and I'm going to go ignore all the other departments, going to work on my own, put my blinkers on and not listen to what's going on. That's not, that's not intentional. But sometimes organizations are set up like that. And the problem with that is it's very hard to care when you don't really see what the bigger picture is. So tell me now if you know what that picture is. Give me a thumbs up if you know what that is. I'm seeing from Joe's face, yay! Of course you do. It's one of the most famous pictures in the world. And the problem is, although I think it's obvious because I looked at it, and once you know, right? So I looked at it and go, it's obvious. It's the side of a head. Yeah. What I think is obvious, and it might be obvious to me because I've been in all those meetings, I've been in those strategy discussions, I've done all that. But when I've cascaded it down to my teams, they've not got the beauty of all that stuff. So if I'm saying, listen, go and fix that warehouse issue, they need to know why. What's in it for me? What's important about this? Why should I care? Are you on the same frequency as your people? Anyone know what WIFM means? Give me a shout in the text. Or put your hand up, whichever. Anyone comfortable with that phrase? Yeah, a few people. What's in it for me? I don't know about you. This phrase, what's in it for me, this idea of a WIFM, it kind of changed the way I look at managing people, because I realized that just because something's important to me doesn't mean it's important to them. And a lot of time people, come to work, they do a good job and they earn the salary and they go home. And I have to try and understand what matters to them and how I can link that into what it is I'm asking them to do. Had a really eye-opening conversation with a lady once. I worked for a paper manufacturing company, and we used to make banknotes, right? So very, 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 it's like the Rolls-Royce of paper. It's unbelievable the quality that goes into banknote production. And I spoke to this lady, and she said, and I said, tell me about your job. And she said, I just inspect paper. And it breaks my heart when I hear people say, I just something. I just drive a forklift truck. I just inspect paper. Because nobody just does something. Why does she inspect paper? So I said, let's go through it. And this is my tip for you as well. If you don't really know how to make that connection, take that job away. What would happen if that job was not being done? And help people see the importance of what they're doing. So I said to this lady, okay, let's go down that route. You just inspect paper. What do you do? She said, well, I literally get paper and I go like that. I inspect it. And I said, well, what if you find a blemish in that paper? She said, well, I pull it out, we flag it, and we trace the source, and that gets scrapped. We cannot have paper going out that's not perfect. I said, okay, so what if you don't show up one day and there's no one to do your job, or you do it badly and that paper goes out with a blemish? She was like, well, the customer will complain. I said, okay, what if the customer doesn't even notice and it gets printed on? Oh, right, okay, well, then it just, the paper will go out with what we call tolerances. Instead of being quite right, it'll be just right, but not quite. So then what does that mean? Well, the general public will go, well, is that a real £10 or not? I can't really tell, because sometimes they have a blemish and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have little marks on them and sometimes they don't. I can't really tell. So, okay, so what you're saying is having faulty banknote paper can actually undermine the integrity of that note. She was like, yeah, I suppose it can. Yeah, I never thought. Yeah. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you're right. I said, okay, and then what happens then? If we are known around the world for being a country that has banknotes with dubious integrity, so you can never really tell if one is real or not, what then? Well, counterfeiters, really. Yeah, okay, so counterfeiters. And what do counterfeiters also do? Well, yeah, they're generally like organised crime, aren't they? I said, of course they are. I said, nobody counterfeits in the back bedroom anymore. You can't do it. What does that mean? What else do organised criminals do? Oh, yeah. Oh, like people trafficking and, drugs, child labour. Okay, so we got from you just do that with paper to you are now protecting the world from people trafficking and child labour. How do you think that person felt? What happened? What do you think her reaction to that was? Again, in the chat, what do you think the reaction to that connection was? Why? How do you think that felt for her, knowing that she really did have a direct link to keeping us all a bit safe? Yeah, surprised but amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she was a little bit taken aback. She found a purpose. She felt proud of what she was doing. And it's not difficult to make that connection, because even if you're not making banknote paper or you're not saving lives, we often have this phrase in where I work, oh, we're not saving lives. No, but you know what? Even if you're an Uber driver, you've got people's lives in your hand. You've got somebody in the back of your car. And if you make one wrong decision, you could absolutely end their life. If you're a shop worker, you could absolutely give somebody the wrong item. They leave, they realize they've got the wrong item. It messes up their day. You are making sure that people's lives carry on, or you're making people's lives better. We need to start getting people to think about that. You've probably already come across this. This is Simon Sinek, and I make no apologies for kind of blatantly ripping it off. Anyone that knows trainers knows we are like magpies. If anyone's got a good idea, I'm happy to share it. But he talks about this idea of the why, and we need to find the why of what we do. So we all know what we do, and we all know how we do it. We need to express the why. So, for example, you might say, you meet someone at a party, and they say, what do you do? And you say, well, I work in recruitment. Okay, fine. Let's have a chat about that. How do you do it? Well, I work with managers, find the right people for the roles. Okay, I'm still not very excited. Apologies if you do work in recruitment, but that's not getting me excited. Now, imagine if you're at a party and you say to someone, oh, hi, my name's Jane. What's your name? Alice. Oh, what do you do, Alice? Me? I ensure everybody has a job they love. Isn't that going to get you out of bed more than going, I work in recruitment? Anyone who knows me always laughs, because I have a very passionate belief that everybody you come across has the capacity to be a rock star in some way, right? They've all got a talent of some sort. We may not know what it is yet. I do believe everyone has a talent. We don't know what it is. So when people meet me and they say, what do you do? My first thing is, I'm a rock star enabler. Now, okay, I have to backtrack a little bit and explain what that means, but they look at me and it gets attention. People go, oh, wow. Because you know what? That gets me out of bed in the morning. When I get that email from someone going, hey, you don't remember me? I get it all the time on LinkedIn. People say, you don't remember me, but 2 years ago, you were coaching me. And guess what? I've just got a new job. My heart sings. It absolutely soars. That gets me out of bed every morning. So when we're talking about that, and even if you've got somebody who says, well, I don't care if everyone's got a job. I'm here just for the money. That's their whiffum. Okay, so you might say, well, my whiffum then is earn as much money as I can to give my family a better life. There's no shame in that. No issue with that. If that's what gets you out of bed, crack on. But what I'm trying to kind of get across is we need people to really think about these things that get them excited. And if people are just coming to work going on doing a good job. The other thing I always say, I used to get a lot of people saying, yeah, but Jane, people just want to come to work, do a job and finish. Yeah, ask them what they do outside of work. If they're coaching a rugby team, if they do gardening, if they volunteer at a local charity shop, because loads of people will do loads of things that you don't even know about. So they do have a whiffum, because that's what that is tapping into, right? The fact that they're enjoying what they do. So how can we bring some of that with them into the workplace? So in a nutshell, if you want your kind of teams to lift off, you need to really think about care. You need to think about making sure everybody on the team has the right competency. You need to think about, is everyone clear on the authority levels, even if those levels are very small, which they will be if that person's new or not very experienced, or if they're at number 4 in terms of the competency, it might be a lot bigger. You need to think about resources, and you need to think about how to engage them. When we put all that in place, we create the right environment and empowerment happens. You don't really have to do anything. Empowerment will happen because people, as I say, once you start treating people like grown-ups, they'll start doing grown-up things. So, any questions or comments? And I hope you don't mind, but I've just put a gratuitous kitten in there because people like kittens, right? I'm just, this is now me hopelessly, trying to make you love me. I've put a kitten in there. Any thoughts, comments? What I would like to do is imagine this. You're going back to your desk now, and you're rushing your lunch, and somebody says, "Oh, you was on that webinar at lunchtime. What was that? What was that like?" Give me a one word. Just give me a one word feedback. What would you say if somebody said you were on that webinar at lunch? What was that like? What would your one word be? Danielle, you don't need to borrow the care model. It's yours. I gift it you for free. Use it with love. Yeah, do they know about the cast? Do they care? Yeah, fantastic. What's your one word? Yeah, thank you very much. We've got, informative, helpful, inspiring, fabulous. That's everything we're hoping to be. And hopefully it's been a great use of your time. I appreciate you coming on a call on your lunch. I know it's not easy, especially getting a lunch. So well done to you for putting your needs first. It's very easy when you're in a management role to kind of constantly put other needs first, but it's really important that you look after yourself. I'm going to leave it there. I'm Jane Hodgson. If you enjoyed it, let Joe know. If you didn't, my name is Brenda. But you can contact me through the email, the phone number, find me on LinkedIn. I would love to hear, if you've taken this forward, how it's worked, and what successes you get with it. But thank you so much for everybody, and thank you for being so engaged and interactive. I've really appreciated it.
Thanks, Jane. I'll put your contact details on the follow-up email that I'm going to send out this afternoon. So
Thank you.
on the correspondence that I'm going to send out, there will be a link to a LinkedIn post. So if you would like a copy of the slides or the recording, then please put a comment against the LinkedIn post and I can follow up and send those to you. Next Tuesday, we've got another event called Building Confidence in HR. This is a follow-up session to the imposter syndrome event that we ran in September. So a link to sign up for that will be included in the email. If anyone is recruiting, we've also got accountancy recruit, FD recruit and exec recruit within the group. Otherwise, I'd just like to say a massive thanks to you, Jane, for your time and effort in putting the event together. It was really informative, and obviously there's some really positive comments there in the chat. But also thanks very much to everyone for listening in. It sounds like you've really enjoyed it. Thank you.